how do people actually start investing when they're kind of feeling uncertain about it? Like, how do they go about it?
Yeah, I think like a pre-step, and there's probably a few pre-steps to this, but I would say like, just to generalize it, is to have your financial life in order. And so what do I mean by that is you've paid off like your high interest debt, right? Like I personally, like I'm out of the belief that you should be investing if you have like high interest credit card debt, right? Like unless you are like a genius picking stocks, like you're not going to beat the 20 to 30% of high interest credit card debt. So the best return on investment you can get is going to be paying off those credit cards, right? Yeah. So you've paid off your credit card debt. Now the next step for me would be you've built up an emergency fund. You've kind of gotten your financial life stable now. You can accurately budget, and that can be, you know, a loose term. It doesn't have to be exactly like how I like to budget, but you at least know how to manage what's coming in and what's going out on a monthly basis. The reason I say that is because you don't ever want to put money into the stock market that you have to have access to, right? Money that you can't afford to lose. That's kind of one of the golden rules when it comes to investing, is that this is money that you can afford to put away for the future. Hopefully it will grow, but if you lose it, you're not sacrificing your ability to pay for rent or to buy groceries or things like that. And then you also want to be able to understand how your money flows in and out on a monthly basis, because investing really works if you can do it for a long period of time and you can do it consistently. And so if you don't really know how much money you have to play with on a monthly basis, you know, one month you might invest $100 and then you might invest $500 and the next month you invest nothing. You know, like the growth that you're going to see is going to be very spotty, very inconsistent. What would be better is if, all right, I can commit to investing $250 a month over the next, you know, for the next year, and then maybe I'll reassess to see if I can start doing more. So what I would say is for people to get started, get yourself to a really stable financial position and figure out how much you can actually start investing with. I think that's a really good place. What do you think?
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think, you know, I'm sure probably a lot of people are investing like I was doing, you know, back at my old job, putting something into a pension or a 401k, whatever your workplace offers you, depending on what type it is. But I think a lot of people are probably already doing something there, but maybe even diving into that a little bit deeper to find out, you know, where is that 401k going? What am I being invested into? You know, I just set up a new one for the new job that I have, and essentially, I just went in and picked, I think it was also through Fidelity. So I just picked like an S&P 500. So that's where my 401k is going. Yeah. But I would say a lot of people, just to start, you know, obviously get your financial health in order, but then just dive into what you already have. You know, a lot of people probably already have something through the workplace. See how much you're putting in there. See where it's actually going inside the 401k. Typically, a lot of them, you can kind of do, they'll assess your risk tolerance that we just talked about and see what kind of vehicle you want to put it in. You know what I mean? Like in the 401k, in an S&P 500, or they'll have some more conservative options and bonds options, whatever. Yeah. But even diving into that first could be a good thing, just to learn a little bit more about, wow, I am investing and where's it actually going, you know?
Yeah. I think that's a really good point, because I think, like you said, most people are going to have access to an employer-sponsored retirement plan. And so that's going to be, they're already going to be investing. And a lot of people don't even consider their 401k like they are investing. You know, for a lot of people, it's like, well, that's kind of the only thing I'm doing. I'm not really investing my money outside of that. But I think a really strong starting point as well, like, you know, like I said, once your financial life is in order, you can kind of figure out how much you can afford to invest. I think looking at the goal behind this investment is also a really good starting place as well. And typically when people say, I want to start investing my money, that's the first question I ask, like, why? Is this for retirement? Is this because you want to save up to buy a home in the next 5 to 10 years? Typically, if you can find an answer to why you want to be investing, like what's the purpose of that money, that's going to tell you where you should park it. In other words, like, is this going to be inside of a retirement account, a taxable brokerage account? Like, when do you need access to this money? And it's also going to tell you what type of investments might be safer for you to do. I think if you can kind of figure out where you want your money, what the purpose of your money is, that's going to help you pick where to put it in. And then that's also going to help you pick what type of investments. You know, if you're talking about retirement investing, and that's going to be a 20 to 40 year goal, then it's really, you know, to your benefit to open a retirement account like a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA, and to pick something like an S&P 500 or a total stock market or even a total world index fund. And that's going to allow your money to grow consistently over time. Versus if you're saving up for a house that you want to buy in 3 years, well, maybe your best investment vehicle is not going to be in the stock market. It's going to be a high yield savings account. You know, so that's a great place to start as well, is figuring out what the purpose is of that money.
Yeah, for sure. And for myself, I know that I don't want to work forever. I really don't want to work. I really don't want to work until 60. I just can't do it. I'm not a working girl. I don't like it. But for me, I have the 401ks from the different jobs that I've had. So I am actively investing in there. I'm also doing a Roth IRA, but I also have a brokerage account, and we're going to talk about what all these mean. But my brokerage account is something that I'm going to be able to access before I'm 59 and a half. It is an investment account, but it's not tied to retirement or it doesn't have any age restrictions or anything like that. So that's kind of my sort of approach to it because I've assessed my goals. Do I want to work forever? No. So that's kind of what I'm doing there. But talk about, when people are hearing like, oh, they're 401k, we understand really what that is, employer sponsored retirement plan. But talk about like the Roth IRA. That's the hot thing, of course. But also talk about the brokerage account. Like, what are the difference between those? What should people have? Bare minimum, what should they start with?
Yeah, I think the Roth IRA is probably the best place for most people to start with if they want to get into retirement investing. And it's literally in the name. It's an individual retirement account. Now, the difference between a Roth and a traditional is basically just how it's taxed. They're both kind of taxed very similarly. It's just you either pay taxes now or you pay taxes later. So if you want to pay taxes now when you know the tax rate and then your money grows tax-free, you can put that into a Roth. If you want to pay taxes later, and in other words, you have more, a lot of people like to think of it as, well, now I have more money to invest because that money isn't being taxed. Then you can put that in a traditional. It'll grow with all that money, and then you just pay taxes as you take it out later. I think I personally always lean towards a Roth IRA because I know what taxes are today. I'm comfortable paying those, so I'd rather pay those instead of what they may be in the future. Either way, though, like you can get into a Roth IRA. I think that's the best place for most people to start because you have access to the entire stock market in terms of what you can pick. For a lot of people inside of their 401k, they tend to be limited, right? They might have a handful of options that are going to be based on their risk tolerance, or it might just be into a target date fund like you had mentioned. Now that's on one end, right? That's if you want to get started with retirement investing. If you're not sure the purpose of this money and you're like, I just want to start investing, but I don't know if I want to have access to this sooner or later, then that's when it would be best to go into something like a taxable brokerage account. Taxable meaning that no matter, you're going to pay taxes on the money, obviously, that you have. You put that money into it, and then you pay taxes as you go and sell it, assuming it's grown. The nice thing about that, though, is that you can access that money at any point in time, whether it's gone up or it's gone down, whether it's been a month or it's been 10 years, you can access that money. And that's what you were talking about right now. A bridge account is what a lot of people tend to call it, to where I'm going to invest inside of this account because I want to have access to it in the next maybe 5 or 10 years, as opposed to a retirement account. You have to wait until you're of retirement age to access. And personally, I think as you kind of get to those higher levels in your personal finance journey, having multiple types of accounts that are going to serve the different purposes behind your money, I think is really important.
Yeah. So we learned about like the different investment vehicles. We've talked about like what stocks are, what index funds are. So we have like the overall, okay, we need to pick the vehicle. Do we want to do an IRA? We can go to Fidelity or Vanguard and open an account there. Pretty simple, right? Then we need to pick if we want to do an S&P 500 fund, if we want to do a single stock. I don't recommend that right away. But if you want to do something like an S&P, then we can go in there, invest our money and put it inside that fund. You've just invested. There you go. Set it and forget it. So I think something that's important here is, and kind of what that guy talks about at the beginning in the video is like a consistent amount, like creating that habit. So I think a good way to do that would be to create like an automation with that, something that's going directly out of your account into that account, something set it and forget it so that you don't, that money doesn't walk away and go other places. It's actually going to be invested. So I think that's an important thing to remember as well. The information, opinions, and recommendations provided on this podcast are for entertainment purposes only and do not constitute professional financial advice. Any financial decisions you make based on the content of this podcast are your responsibility. We strongly recommend consulting with a licensed financial advisor or other qualified professional before making any significant financial decisions. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge that we are not liable for any financial outcomes.